Welcome to Mining the Media, providing nuggets of news and cutting-edge questions and answers, minus the political blather. Here are your hosts, G.K. Allen and Dave Jeffers.
Everybody, welcome back to Mining the Media. I'm Dave Jeffers, the producer and co-host. That's G.K. Allen, our creator and co-host, and we are so excited to have this young man, Peter Dankleson, and his mom, Dede, to come talk to us. You know, when we first started this show, we were talking about putting together. GK was like, Dave, I don't want to just do news. We definitely need to do things that's not news, but we want to do good stories, feel good stories, and stories about talent that's maybe not getting the level of publicity it should. Well, Peter, I think I first started watching clips of Prince on Instagram TV, and you know how you start watching certain genres, Instagram will start giving you videos of that genre, and next thing I know, you appear on my phone in the middle of the night. I'm hitting it with my little earpods, and I'm watching this young guy, and I actually forgot to turn the sound on. I said, well, look at this guy. So I rewind it, put the sound on. I've seen AC/DC live twice, Bon Scott and Brian Johnson. Nice. Okay, so I saw both iterations. You blew me away the first time I saw that. And so I didn't even notice that you had this birth issue when you were born with it, because my little sister was born with a cleft palate, so I understand all that stuff that you go through. But so once I started reading up on you, I was telling GK, I said, we need to book this guy. He goes, absolutely. One word on a text message. And so I reached out to your mom, and she was gracious enough to say, absolutely, we'd love to come on your show. So Dede, why don't you kind of tell us Peter's, I guess, his journey to where he's become this amazing young musician?
So, he's only been playing guitar for 5 years. He started when he was 15. He'll be 21 next month. So started 15 and a half, I guess you were. Yeah. So before that, he was a Star Wars fan mostly. He always had a lightsaber in his fan. So I guess he traded the lightsaber for the guitar, which was kind of funny. But, in the beginning, he was born with a condition called Goldenhar syndrome, which is basically just a complicated name for a bunch of birth defects that occur together frequently. One of those being a cleft palate, like you mentioned, which is a hole in the roof of your mouth. He was missing his left ear. His most critical thing was his airway. He couldn't breathe through his mouth or nose, and his prematurity. He was premature. So he needed a trach at birth to secure his airway, and a feeding tube because he also couldn't swallow safely without aspirating. And so he's had 36 surgeries, craniofacial. All of them have been to help him see, eat, breathe, chew, swallow, speak better. Oh, and this is Abby. If for those that are watching, she has to be right next to me.
Of course.
Dogs are always part of our healing process. So
of course, yes.
Yeah. But his medical journey is complicated, and we actually have a book coming out sometime. I'm working to get it published right now, sharing his journey and how we've combined the music and the motivation. So Pete's Diary initially was set up as a motivational speaking. It was me and my writing, a journal I kept when he was younger. And we spoke at schools before COVID. We did a lot of speaking at schools, school assemblies about, embracing what makes you different and self-empowerment, because so many kids struggle with that in school. Yeah. And Peter obviously knows what it's like to be different. So, and then once he started playing guitar, we kind of merged the music and the motivation, and the kids loved the music playing. So,
of course.
It's a unifier. Music is a unifier. And even though it was so funny, most of the kids, you would play AC/DC at the schools, and you're like, if we tried to play like Name That Tune or something, a lot of them were like, Aerosmith, they're like, any kind of old rock band that they could think of the name. for
you try to, do like, okay, what's played at like, football games and stuff like that. If you hear, you could do Queen.
Yeah, so it was fun. But since COVID hit, our speaking engagements were all canceled. We've done some Zoom things and stuff like that, but it's just not the same. But
Sure.
and then we focused on the music because that was what was getting engagement from people. And like you said, you were like blown away by his AC/DC cover, and I think that that attracted people to our account, and then they kind of hear some of his backstory here and there, which is inspiring, and how he's overcome so much. So, but it's really your talent that's kind of drawn people in, I think, which is really that's the whole that's the coolest part of the story. People don't see it differently.
I do love the fact too, though. Every day when he posts some music, it's not a matter of, hey, look at me play this crazy lick. It's, hey, maybe you're having a bad day today or something. So he always puts just a really sweet note there. And I believe as a Christian that God helps us overcome some deficiencies with extra talents. And there's men out there, I know people who've been playing guitar for 15, 20 years, that their jaw is going to hit the floor because I'm going to be linking to his website and his YouTube page. Their jaws are going to hit the floor when they hear this young man play, and he's only been at it for 5 years. I mean, he is a gifted natural. And my partner up there, who has a huge music background, is chomping at the bit to start talking to Peter about music. So I'm going to turn it over to GK so he can him and Peter can talk the real stuff. My partner, go ahead, buddy.
Well, I'll tell you something, Peter. It's a small little story in my life that I think you'll appreciate. And a little bit later, I would like to suggest a couple of guitarists for you to pay attention to if you haven't done it already. Because in all the years I was a music critic from 1974 through the rest of the 20th century, there were a number of guitarists I got to see live, to interview, to review, so on and so forth. And some of them you may not know, and I would love you to pick up on that. But as far as AC/DC is concerned, bear with me, Peter, because there was a band when punk rock was being invented at CBGB's in the mid-'70s. I was not a member of the band as a musician, but I co-wrote some of their material, and my brother was the drummer. My dear friend was the lead guitarist and primary songwriter, rhythm guitarist, lead singer, Rafael Fuentes. And we had a band called Baby Moon. And we played a lot of dates with unsigned bands at the time, like the Ramones and Blondie. So we were there at ground zero when punk was literally invented. Flash forward to 1977 when Baby Moon stopped existing for a while, but some of the personnel became the Avengers. And here's where AC/DC comes in. AC/DC's first New York gig was at a major venue in New York City. However, prior to that, AC/DC did kind of for the media and the cool people, if you will, they did a gig at CBGB's. And the Avengers, the band I was related to through songwriting and so on and so forth, they co-billed with AC/DC's very first New York City gig. So I saw them originally, and I wish, Peter, seriously, it's a shame that smartphones weren't around then, because if they were, I'd send you the video. Because I was about 10 feet away from about 120 decibels of guitar. And it was a wonderful experience. Now, that's how I got to know AC/DC. How did you get to know AC/DC?
Oh man, that's a good question. They're really the band that kind of kickstarted everything for me, and they're still kind of the band that I kind of, they're the bedrock that I've kind of built everything on.
So they're sort of the seed where everything else grew from?
Exactly. Well, it's funny because I could think of now, looking back, way, quite a few years before I even picked up the guitar, we're in the car and Dad had Eruption on, and he's like, hey, check this out. None of us really kind of thought anything of it, but, turned it up and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Didn't really think I want to do that, but it was that's pretty impressive. Sounds really cool. But I don't know, I started to listen to a little bit more kind of rock and roll tunes and kind of started to break away from, what I'd been listening to in middle school, just kind of whatever was on the, at the top of the radio at the time. I don't know, just something kind of steered me in a bit of different direction. And then I'm like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to pick up a guitar, maybe just try and see how it goes. Might be kind of fun. And you start playing a little bit, and it's like, well, what do you want to do? And I heard Back in Black, or I found the video on YouTube of the the music video I'm playing along. You see Angus running around and going crazy, and it's like, that's pretty cool. Why not try to do what they're doing? And
Wonderful band.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, I've got to. This is the old critic in me, so bear with me. In hearing your playing, you have one of my favorite things about any guitar player, and that is the wonderful combination of passion and precision. Some guys are almost too precise, and some guys are almost too analytical. They play almost like a mathematician rather than an artist. And there's some guys you may well know already, but you may not. And I'm just going to name a few. Maybe I can find a name or two for you to rediscover or to discover someone who you can take from. One of them was from one of the really great bands of the mid-'70s, a British band called Bebop Deluxe. Are you familiar with the name Bebop Deluxe? In 1976 or so, they came out with an album called Sunburst Finish, like the guitar finish. Their guitarist is a fellow named Bill Nelson. He still has a site. It's billnelson.com. He's an English guy. I got the privilege of reviewing them twice. Headliner, and then later on in Philadelphia, they opened up for Robin Trower.
Oh, cool.
Bill Nelson was very influenced by Jimi Hendrix, the studio version of Jimi Hendrix, the drones, the melodies, the counter melodies, not the flashy burning of guitars, not the stage version of Jimi. But Bill Nelson was, you can picture Third Stone from the Sun by Hendrix and the drone of that. He took a lot of that and incorporated it in the way he played. And I think you'd be a perfect musician to be inspired by Bill Nelson, especially Sunburst Finish. There's a slide guitar player that I think you would love. He's from Australia. Do you know Dave Hole, Hole? He's up in years now. Saw him many times in the late 80s and 90s. Get an album called Short Fuse Blues by Dave Hole. He's the best electric slide player I ever heard. And I think he will inspire you. I'm serious. I think you will take licks and inspiration from him. And there was an American band called Mountain. Are you familiar with them?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Never in My Life by Mountain.
Great.
I want to hear you do that song.
It's a great song. Yeah.
Isn't it?
He plays and sings Mississippi Queen.
Yeah.
I wish I could sing it like Leslie, but
He's working on it.
I got Best of Mountain 8-track by chance back in the I was a college student and I went to the warehouse, and you know how they have the big piles of discount things. So I'm a poor college student, and I see Best of Mountain, and one of the guys working there goes, "Hey dude, you need to get that. These guys rock." So I got it plugged into my little 8-track player in my Firebird, and man, I was off and running.
And their drummer, by the way, Corky Lang, was one heck of a drummer as well.
That
and there's another
band was fantastic with Felix on the keyboard.
I mean, serious business.
Fantastic. And I love the live album Woodstock.
Yeah.
Woodstock's fantastic. I mean, that version of Long Red, that's like really iconic. I didn't realize that until after I heard it.
I realized too, and in reading your bio, that you like Thin Lizzy.
A little bit, yeah. Gary Moore was in it for a while.
Yeah, Gary Moore was, he died much too young and drank much too much. But he was one of the great guitar players of all time. There's another Irish guitar player who died too young as well. Are you familiar with Rory Gallagher?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Love Rory. Yeah.
Because that's another one that I think, and I gather as well that you're a big fan of Peter Green and early Fleetwood Mac.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I got to see them at the Fillmore East. They were the best live blues band I ever saw. So I think your roots are really good. Now let me ask you this: the part of me that's still a bit of a music critic. 2 years from now, where do you want to be creatively?
That's like the $1 million question, isn't it? Well, I mean, as always, hope to keep progressing as a player. Get just better. Hopefully, have some music out.
No, not hopefully. You will have some music out.
Yes. We're working on that right now, and that's kind of in the works. So that's kind of that's the next.
Well, remember one thing when you're recording. and give you a little bit of advice. When you go into the recording studio, remember, it costs money.
Right.
And the best thing you can do is have your rhythm tracks as precise as possible so that the bass, rhythm, and drums are pretty much there.
Mhm.
So everything else can be used to sweeten it up and to overdub, so on and so forth. Because
Yes.
too many people go into a studio and they do it almost like a rehearsal hall, and that could really jack up the price.
Right, right, yeah. So I mean, like, we're working on some tunes right now, and we're like, okay, you know, like, I have ideas for solos and stuff, but it's like we're doing like the rhythm stuff, and you know, and then we'll see what that whole recording process will be like. I don't know, like live tracking, maybe. I don't know how that would go, or we could just do like the classic, you know, drums first, then bass and guitar and all that. But we'll just kind of cross that road when we come to it. We'll see.
Well, the one thing I gather is while your guitar playing is exceptionally good, I gather you're in the formative stages as a songwriter, that you're beginning the process of being a songwriter. Am I right about that?
Yes. Yep.
Let me give you a word of advice on that. Sometimes your best riffs, your best song titles, or your best lyrics, they happen at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah.
And you think you're going to remember them at 9 o'clock in the morning. You're not. So write
Yeah.
them down.
Yeah. No, I've had an instance where, you know, in the middle of the night, I'll come up with something and I'm half awake. I'll kind of wander in here and kind of play something acoustically and record it in the voice notes. And then next morning I might listen to it and go, hey, that's pretty good. Or, oh man, why did I get out of bed for this?
Well, Dede, let me ask you this. Do you get there's a Yiddish phrase called kvelling, which basically means, I love this person so much my heart could burst. Do you ever get the feeling sometimes in watching and listening to Peter that you're kvelling, that you feel like, oh my, I love him so much my heart could burst? You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So there's been a few times, especially recently. I don't know if you saw social media today, but he played with Buck Cherry at Summerfest.
Wow.
Saturday night. So that was one of those
Very
proud
nice.
moments for me and his dad. It was really cool to see him up on stage with those guys.
Mhm.
Super nice. And another time he was on stage with Jared James Nichols, who is another influence and,
Yes, yeah.
someone Peter admires. And you know, he invited Peter to play with him. Those moments, because it's about the music and you getting up there and living your dream and doing what you love, but it's also about the kindness that comes back to you that you put out into the universe.
Yeah.
You know, we've had so many really great things, including like this logo and these shirts, you know, a marketing company, you know, just volunteered to make for us after finding us on social, like you guys did. So it, you know, there's just been a lot of kindness. And it, you know, it's different with social media, but it's not. I mean, we had a lot of that happen through the years with your medical. Every time you had a surgery or things like that, just the outpouring of support and kindness from friends and family that helped us get through those really, really tough surgeries and recoveries and medical times. So
What I will say is, in this day and age where everybody's a victim and everybody's looking for sympathy, and 9 times out of 10, they're really not. To see somebody overcome, but not just overcome, not complain, and not just not complain, but to take this and run with it and put joy out into the world. And I mean, again, Peter, the thing that I love the most about you is you take these amazing moments of music that you put together and you inspire people by just putting out a really positive vibe and telling somebody, hey, if you're having a bad day, I mean, you've done it for me. I mean, I'm 64 years
great.
old.
That's good to hear.
I'm living,
Like, I hope it helps somebody.
I'm living a very blessed life. I have no complaints. A beautiful family, grandson, but you know, everybody gets down or tired, and just to see you do what you do, and just, you know, always thinking about others, and I just love that about you. You have a servant's heart, and you just have a great, and I know it's because of the raising you have. Your mama's got an amazing heart for that, but you guys are just wonderful, and I'm going to make sure on all our social media sites that we spread the news about I call it a ministry. My pastor always talks about taking misery and turning it into a ministry, and going out and serving, you know,
Yeah.
Because there's going to be somebody who's going to come along behind you, and they're going to go through something similar, if not the same thing.
Right.
And they're going to see this very unassuming young man. I mean, the first time I saw you play, I was like, this has got to be fake almost. It was so good and just so natural. It just
And emotive.
Yes, and it's like, because you see all these guys, what's that video game where you could play the guitar and everything?
Oh, Guitar Hero.
Yeah. And I was like, is this for real? But then when you watch them, you're like, no, that I've seen live too many live bands that, yeah, it's just a wonderful thing that you do, and I look forward to buying all your original music. It's going to be great to have.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to having him sell it.
It's getting
Sure.
Well, there's one little bit of advice too. Forgive me, I'm 72 and I'm a little bit of a geezer. Okay, I'm a Gramps. So you're hearing this from a Gramps who still has a 15-year-old drummer heart, because that's what I was for years, a drummer. Don't overthink when it comes to songwriting and performing. The minute you start to overthink too much, your playing suffers, because often the passion is lost.
Yeah.
And the thinking gets in the way with the improv, especially. So I'm sorry if I'm giving too much advice, but I really feel I can give you good advice. Don't overthink.
Greg, you're right, because I'm an author and I've had to learn my writing. One of my heroes is Ernest Hemingway. Not the greatest guy in the world, but as
Great writer, not such a nice person.
Yeah, but he was so meticulous about editing, and I think that's why I have an eye for editing. And it's just too. I actually learned from this one English writer who said, if you can say something, you can say 3 words in 2 words, then use 2. And what Greg is saying, and I was going to say that too, while you're writing, never try to write the perfect song.
Right.
Just write.
No, you'd never get one written.
Exactly.
That's it. And you're just, it's going to flow out of you. Just
I mean, that's a great example of that. We're working, we have a tune right now that we kind of came up with. And I mean, just like, I wrote it just kind of one morning, just kind of playing along with the drum track. Like, I mean, usually, you try and jam and then something kind of pops up and you listen to a recording and see what kind of happens. But it was just like, really early in the morning and I was playing and then this riff kind of popped up. I'm like, hey, that's interesting. And there was another part that I previously recorded and it was like, oh, hey, this could go together. And then I kind of, put the two together, played it, sent it over to my drummer. He's like, you got something there. Yeah. That's just kind of an fun part.
You guys
I gather you're a fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan, I do believe.
Yes. Yeah.
I
had the honor on 2 occasions. On 2 occasions, I got to see him live, and on 2 occasions, I got to interview him. His publicist was the name of Charlie Comer, and Charlie Comer also had the Fabulous Thunderbirds and the Stones at one time, so on and so forth. Chieftains, the Irish band. He had a great Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and he was an amazing publicist. Used to be the head of Island Records publicity in New York. Through Charlie, I got to interview on my old radio show way back when I started out. Your hero, one of your heroes is Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie was one of the nicest guys I've ever had the privilege of interviewing. Shortly after he died, Charlie called me at about 3 or 4 in the morning. And in hearing your story and in remembering my buddy Charlie, because he's gone now, so on and so forth, I want to mention something to you that I think you truly appreciate if you don't already have it in your collection. Are you familiar with a guitar player named Lonnie Mack?
I've heard of him. I don't think I know too much.
Lonnie Mack was probably, if any one person can be given credit for inventing what's known as Southern rock, Allman Brothers, Wet Willie. He came out with an album in 1963-4 called The Wham of That Memphis Man. He was a brilliant Fender Flying V guitar player, had a huge hit with the instrumental version of Memphis, follow-up called Wham. In 1985, he recorded an album with Stevie Ray Vaughan called Strike Like Lightning. Lonnie Mack, star of the album, Stevie Ray Vaughan is with him. I'm telling you something, Peter. Get it. Get it. You will fall in love with this album. Your playing will be inspired by this. because Stevie and Lonnie, because Stevie was influenced by Lonnie, the same way Dwayne Allman was influenced by Lonnie, and Jimmy Page was influenced by Lonnie.
Yeah. Well, you know, the first time I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan, I just got out of the Army. I was in Northern California, and me and a buddy decided we got to go down to Berkeley and see Elvin Bishop. And plus, John Lee Hooker was going to be playing with the Berkeley Blues Band. So we were so pumped. And we had our tickets. We drive up, and the line is around the block. We got in, got a seat. And before they go, hey, we wanted to introduce you a little blues player from Texas. So give a real warm Northern California welcome to little Stevie Ray Vaughan. And this dude walks out looking like he just got off his tractor. He's wearing old beat up hat, a snap up cowboy shirt, Levi and his boots, the toe, you know, when they get old and dry, they curl up. And we're looking at this dude like, where'd you find this guy? And tell about the third lick. And people set up, and I mean, he got 4 encores, and finally they had to say, we cannot bring him back out because we got to be done by midnight. I want to go back to one last thing before we stop, because about this, when you get the motivation. You guys are from Chicago, so of course you've heard the band Chicago.
Yes. Yep.
The song 25 or 6 to 4. Do you know how that came about? Okay. The lead singer, last name Lamb, Rob Lamb, they're on tour, and he always had his little keyboard. If you go to the Hard Rock in Chicago, he's given that little keyboard there in Chicago. So he wakes up in the middle of the night. He can't sleep, and he starts putting this tune together, just music. Yeah. So he calls up his buddy, I think Peter Cetera. He goes, man, you got to listen to this. And we need some words. And the guy's like, what time is it? He goes, I don't know. I think it's 25 or 6 to 4. That was how the song came up. And then when you read the lyrics, they literally wrote the lyrics based off of his answer. And so the point is, when the inspiration hits you, definitely write it down, because Robert Louis Stevenson had a nightmare. A great author, Robert Louis Stevenson, he had a nightmare. You know what that book ended up being? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Wow.
So write them down. Well, you know what? I don't want to take up too much of your time. Plus, thank you so much for coming to us. We will be posting your website, your iTunes, your YouTube, Instagram TV. Everybody needs to get up there and follow you. Hey, folks, if you just want to hear something crazy music, that's all you need to know. But this young man will inspire you. He will motivate you, and we need to support him. So please let us know, Dede, when the book comes out. Let us know when the music's out. Just keep us up to date, and we will push it out there for everybody to see.
I have truly enjoyed speaking to both of you. God bless you, and I wish you nothing but success.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, you guys have been great. Thanks a lot. Take care, and bye-bye.